Moment for everyone to make their way in. Let the song play for a little bit, the clean version.
Hello.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hi. Is it
Apologies.
playing
My
good?
camera doesn't work. Like ever since I use like the Erie like temporary computer, it just does not connect. So just a heads up.
No
Unless
problem.
anyone has a fix for that, if you can send that over, that'd be perfect.
Mm. Give it another minute or so. So I know folks are leapfrogging and not everybody ends their meetings 5 minutes before the hour,
Oh,
which
they
is
do.
our best practice.
Oh, y'all got best practices on meetings? We
Yeah.
lucky if our stuff don't go past 5 minutes past the hour.
Now, 25 minutes, 55 minutes, 85 minutes. We got to leave that
I
break.
love it. Look, I love it. I'm gonna institute that in my next role.
Yeah, because we were going too hard. We have to stop in the middle of the meeting and say, I need to take a break.
So I think the interesting thing is converting from in person to remote, because in the office we have these screens, these panels outside that have like all the meetings that are there, and there's also a doorbell on there.
Mm.
Ooh. And let me tell
Well,
you,
yep, y'all.
I was good for like, hey girls, I need y'all to get out of my room. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, all right. We will go ahead and get started because I want us to have as much time as possible chatting with Dawn. And I'm sure there will be a lot of questions. So I want to make sure we have as much time as possible on this Friday. So happy Friday, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Kevin Davis. Proudly served as Erie Senior Director of Marketing and Brand Strategy, and also the co-chair for the Culture Black Employee Resource Group. So happy to see you all on this Friday as we close out a very eventful, for different reasons, Black History Month at Erie, but we wanted to make sure that we still kept some of our programming, and we ended on a high note. And I wanted to bring a carefully curated guest to the group today. And Kelly, it looks like you are frozen on my end. If anybody else is, so there we go. All right, so it's Friday. It's lunchtime. Hopefully, you have something to eat, something to drink, so that you can get as much out of the conversation as possible today. But before we get into our guest speaker, I want to welcome everyone for joining us today. I know we have some of our guests joining us today who are not members of the Black ERG. Always welcome to join us. So I shout you out. I see you. Appreciate you all in the space. And do we have any first time folks with us today? If so, what's your name? What do you do? And where did you come from? Dwayne, I think I saw your hand.
Yep. Uh Sorry, like I don't know what's going on with this camera situation. Every time I try to connect it with like this temporary computer, it just doesn't like actually show me. I'm not sure why. But my name's Dwayne Harris. I'm a senior financial analyst here. I started in Erie back in November of 2023. So thanks for shooting out the invite, and yeah, nice to meet everyone. And I look forward to more meetings.
Glad you could join us. Any other first timers with us today? All right. Let me save you.
And everyone is frozen, so I don't know if you guys can see me. But hello, I'm in the WIC department. I work at HP in the Humble Park location, and I've been with Erie for almost 2 years. And then your question was, where did we come from? What do you mean by that?
Before Erie. What did you do prior to Erie?
Before Erie? Um, I was I still worked in public health nutrition, and I worked with Lake County Health Department.
Okay. Glad you can join us, Vanessa.
Sorry, Kevin, I didn't answer that question too. So before I was at Erie, I was an accounting manager or the manager of the accounting department in education. I was in the education industry. So,
Okay. It's always good to hear the diversity of experience and where folks came from and how we all ended up at the same place. It's always interesting. So I like to kind of hear that backstory. And then, that's how we get to know each other as well. Any February birthdays or any Erie versaries during the month of February? We want to make sure we shout you out. Nobody. Usually we have at least one. It's one of each, but any March birthdays coming up or March Erie-versaries? Since that is what, Sunday? That's right around the corner.
Um, so I'm Grace. I'm also new, and my birthday is on March 1st.
Oh yeah, you're right around the corner.
I know.
You're right around the corner. Happy early birthday.
Thank you.
All right. We will keep it moving. So this is Black History Month. And, dear, we typically do a little bit more during the month of February, but, we've been dealing with the great disruption, the great network disruption this month. And so we wanted to make sure that we rescheduled some things and focused our efforts on a few things. And so in that case, it became our event today, making sure that we had it. But hopefully you've been seeing all the different posts on social media. We've been shouting out some Erie leaders, but then also just healthcare leaders in the city of Chicago and the surrounding areas. If you know anything about me, you know that I'm a big fan of sharing photos and the legacies of folks with color photos and that are still here with us on Earth. That's just my way of doing things and not focusing on the ancestors all the time or on the atrocities of Black history, because that doesn't define Black history. Black history is a continuum. And so at Erie, we try to make sure that we tie the two together. And so we've been posting on social media, and I've been seeing tons and tons of engagement on social media, which is a good thing. And, there's dope folks all around. So that's happening. And so we're here today at the end of the month. And during this month, we also opened our new clinic, Erie Sankofa Village, which is the 14th clinic for Erie. That has been an amazing accomplishment. Thinking back to when I started in 2019, we were having conversations about expansion, and that evolved into West Garfield Park. Do we have anyone here from the Sankofa Village team? If so, you can thumbs up or just type in the chat. So I'm not sure who's all here. Starting early this month and opening up a new clinic, there's a lot of work, a lot of effort that went into that over the past few years. And so to see this project go from conversations to community conversations to funding agreements to the groundbreaking, the beam signing, and then now we're marching toward the ribbon cutting, and we've been seeing patients. And so just want to take a moment and pause and shout out our Sankofa Village team because they're going through all these transitions and growth as we experienced our network disruption. And so we want to make sure we shout out the team over there, give them some love whenever possible. And tell your friends and family, we are seeing patients over in West Garfield Park. We would love for Erie Family Health Centers to be their healthcare home. So please spread the word. you'll see more information about that in the next week or so. We'll be sharing that in our communications that we are looking for new patients. So you'll see some outreach from Erie on that regard. You'll also see some publicity. We've been getting some interviews because of the press release we put out announcing the opening. So you're seeing a bit more traction in the community about that. And we just have an amazing team from front lines to back end support over at Sankofa Village. So I just want to pause and recognize them, and especially as we end out Black History Month, and this is our first clinic where we're serving a predominantly Black community, and so it all kind of ties together. So you see someone from Sankofa, please shout them out. So I'm going to shift gears now. So we went through our usual announcements. My co-chair is out today. She had another meeting to attend, so I will fly solo today. And I'm going to introduce our speaker. And as we are in our conversation, please feel free to drop questions in the chat, and we'll try to make sure we have some time to open it up and have an open dialogue if possible. So we are lucky to have this person joining our meeting today. She's a global marketing executive and digital strategist and builder of inclusive cultures, and that is Dawn Oliver. She has spent the last 20 years inside of some of the Fortune 500's biggest companies, from Harman Kardon, Samsung, working for Ford, some ad agencies. And in 2019, she packed her bags and headed to South Korea and worked on a exchange program through Harman Kardon / Samsung phone company. Samsung owns everything, but they also own Harman Kardon, which is a high-end speaker, headphone manufacturer, sound company. She's a native Detroiter, and that's how I've known Dawn. I've known Dawn probably close to 20 years at this point. And she's passionate about two things: driving business results and building up people around her, which is not hard to see if you follow her on any social media site. She's a mentor, site leader, community member for various organizations. She's also a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So I want to make sure we shout that out. She's an alum of Central Michigan and also my alma mater, Eastern Michigan University. And she considers herself to be the shenanigans master, which we'll probably get into a little bit later. So welcome, Dawn, to the Black ERG February meeting.
Hello, thank you for having me. I am very happy to be here.
So I wanted to bring Dawn on for a number of reasons. One, because she's generally just a dope person. But two, and we had this conversation prior to, Dawn was recently reorged out of her company. And and in our conversations, the one thing that stood out is that her confidence has been unwavering. And so it just made sense to just have this conversation about going from imposter syndrome to confidence. And we try to bring folks we bring folks, not try, we bring folks with real practice and experience that can speak from a place of experience, not a place of theory. And so I thought that it was appropriate to have Dawn join us today. You know, there's a lot going on around the country. We started talking about meritocracy. I'm not going to get into that because this isn't the forum, but that is a conversation that is happening outside of the walls at Erie. And so I wanted to bring Dawn on to kind of share how she got from that place of imposter syndrome to confidence, working for some major brands around the world, and being reorged, i.e., let go from her company, and remaining confident. And so that's confident. Huge. And so that's huge. I'm getting a little bit of an echo. Give me 1 second. So we're going to get into your origin story here. So you've achieved some amazing things, leading strategy at Fortune 500 companies, been recognized by Samsung's president. And the title of this talk is Moving from Imposter Syndrome to Confidence. How can you take us back to a specific moment early in your career where that feeling of being a fraud was huge? And what did those inner voices sound like?
Yeah, so I'm going to start off with say I have been thinking about this and trying to pinpoint that in my head, and I'm going to go back to the University of Michigan in 1994, 95, when I started college. I don't even think it was work. It was more of I'm literally a student in one of the world's best schools, most recognized places. And I was like, why am I here? Why y'all let me in? And I felt it took me a minute to get my bearings. I will honestly say, probably like a good year to get my bearings. And I felt like I shouldn't be there. But then I started to think about it and I look at the people around me and it's like, why shouldn't I be here? I worked just as hard. I'm just as smart. Now, was my study skills all that? I'm going to say no. But being in an environment where it was just, I'm going to say coming from an environment where you are amongst the smartest people in the room, um, and then you're going into a room where everybody is just as smart or smarter than you. And of course, their experiences are 100% different. I'm born, bred, reared in Detroit, educated in Detroit public schools. So thinking about that, that's where I know it started for me, was when I started college. And it was trying to get my bearings to live up to the fact that, hey, one, you're paying for this. And also, no, you really belong here and you need to act like you belong here.
And so that's a I didn't have that awakening early on. For me, it was more in the professional spaces, um, and so in thinking about in the professional journey, there's usually a point where you realize you're sitting in a meeting or working on a project, or there may be an interaction where you have a bit of a revelation. Can you think back to a time where that happened in your working career where you're like, oh, this is
That
interesting?
Yeah, I'm going to say I started out, as you mentioned, I started out in ad agencies, and my trajectory in marketing, similar to yours, was not the traditional thing. I was pre med when I was at Michigan. I knew I was going to medical school. And then when I left school like my senior year. And so I had probably like a year or two where I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do, how I wanted to get there, and I was doing like odd jobs. So when I started at Campbell Ewald, I started from what I consider a deficit because I had the only advertising marketing I'd seen was Who's the Boss, not yeah, Who's the Boss, and what is the Brady Bunch, not Brady Bunch, Bewitched. That's my extent of advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so because I started out um, behind everyone, I took it upon myself to, when I started back to school, when I got to Central, I took all marketing classes, all PR classes, everything that I could possibly take to fulfill the last 20 hours that I needed to graduate. Then I moved on to Eastern for graduate school. And I'm sitting in rooms with people, they majored in this, they've been doing this for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I was like, no, y'all are wrong. Some of the things that they were saying was just flat out wrong. But then I realized that, okay, I am just as smart as these people because one, I took the initiative to catch up to where they were. It was, and Kev, you know this, I spent a lot of time making sure I learned the business from the inside, but also from the outside. So I would tell people all the time, they know I'm chronically online. And so, but that is helpful when you work in marketing,
Absolutely.
especially because within my last role, I was in consumer electronics. I managed all of the well, I had home audio and luxury audio, but my team, we handled headphones, portables, all portables, earbuds and stuff like that. And it was incumbent upon us to be able to come to the team with ideas of what we should put in the market and how we should do it. So I will say, back to circling back to answering your question, it had to be when I was at Campbell Ewald. Um, and I want to say it would have definitely been when I was on that postal service business and just kind of sitting in the room and like, oh, okay, no, I get this. I understand what's happening. And I can effectively and impactfully make recommendations and suggestions on how we should move with particular campaigns.
So we titled this, and this is a phrase that we use a lot. You know, we titled this "Lean into Your Dopeness," and that is very powerful and specific. For you, what is the core difference between confidence and dopeness? And is dopeness about competence, authenticity, or something else?
I'm gonna say it's a combination of it of everything. Now, I'm gonna say I've met some confident dummies. It's just the truth. Um, and you want to understand kind of where does that confidence and audacity come from. But it's believing in yourself. So thinking about this conversation we're gonna have is I really feel like your being dope is knowing what you're talking about, being confident in what you're talking about, and also showing up as your authentic self. I think a lot of times, and especially in corporate, a lot of times I'm the only woman. A lot of times, more times than not, I'm the only black person, black woman in the room. And it's making sure that, hey, I know my stuff, but I'm not arrogant about it. It's, I know this because one, I'm supposed to because it's my job, but also it's because I've studied, I've listened to what's happening in the room, and I feel like I can add value to what's being said. And what's interesting also when I was looking at this is I had one of my um, sales directors. So along my journey, I worked on car audio. I led the global business for Ford and Lincoln within Harman for car audio. So if you have a Lincoln, if you have a higher end, you have Revel in your vehicle. If you have a Ford post 2017, 2018, you probably have a Bang& Olufsen system. That was my job, was to do marketing for that globally. And I just recall being in a room with my sales director, and there's a ton of other people. And part of what they also have to do is not only sell car audio, but other technology systems within vehicles. And Dave said, it's really funny because he was like, Dawn doesn't say a lot in meetings unless she has something of value to add. And she's always right about what she's saying. That right there, I was like, oh, because again, this is a highly technical role, working with engineers, working with R&D. So not only understanding the value of the audio system that it brings, the name and prestige brings to the Ford and Lincoln nameplate, but it's understanding the technical intricacies of the audio system. And if I don't have an engineer with me, I need to be able to effectively speak about it. So having a senior director that's in the meeting, understanding that he noticed that about me, made me feel pretty good. Now, I won't lie, sometimes getting outside recognition makes you feel good. And that was one of those times that I felt really good because I'm not an engineer, but I do understand what was going on and how we could effectively grow our business within Ford and Lincoln.
So I want to shift gears here, and the way that I'll link it is we're going to talk about the international shift for you, and for Erie folks, that may be the equivalent of folks that are not coming from a healthcare background into an unfamiliar sector. And so, as you're listening to Dawn, think about it from that perspective because that was me. I didn't come from healthcare. And so, it can feel a bit foreign. And so, you spent 3 years over in South Korea as part of the Samsung Talent Exchange. And so now you're a high achieving American, add on Black American, suddenly in this new culture. How did that experience of being an outsider reshape your understanding of your own capabilities, or did that amplify your imposter syndrome?
Um, it was a combination of the two things because you're going into another culture where I didn't have a lot of familiarity with. So I also understand the perception of Americans, Black Americans, and women. All that kind of runs through my head and everything that I do, everything that I was doing there. So getting there, initially it was like, okay, again, me walking into a space that I know automotive, I could probably sell you a car. I can tell you, especially if it's a Ford or Lincoln, I can tell you almost anything about the car about the past 15, 20 years. Well, this is working down in the very technical level because it was semiconductors. It was semiconductors, your infotainment system, so everything in front of your car and your dash, all of that. I was like, okay, I know these things because I had to help sell them and I did sales enablement, but I didn't know like the nitty gritty. I didn't understand TCUs and all that other fun stuff. So I probably spent first 2 or 3 months while they was trying to figure out legally what I can do. That's a whole other story. Uh, um, Reading on IoT, IVIs, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, ADAS systems in cars, so much so where I can tell you that I would talk to people and I think their eyes would glaze over because they're like, girl, we don't want to know all that. Just tell me what car to buy. uh, and there was a moment, my very first day in the office, and I will also point out to people that I moved during COVID. Don't ever leave the country. Don't do that. Just don't. I mean, if you want to, fine, but don't ever leave the country and move to another one during the pandemic. It's not as fun and sexy as it sounds. But I just remember my first day in the office, and I was because I did market research and product planning. I was with one of the people that's going to be my mentor persons, and we were talking about automotive and how Harman got so much automotive business, blah blah blah. And I was explaining to him how Ford Motor Company operates, where higher ups don't make decisions. It is literally the day-to-day functional people within Ford that can make company changing make or break decisions. And he wanted to argue with me and he told me that I was wrong. And I was looking and I think I pushed back a little bit. And I'm thinking to myself, while I was in quarantine, I was literally still doing work on Ford Business. And at the time, that's when Jim Hackett was still CEO. I was like, I got his phone. I got his number in my phone. I can call him right now.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I did? The old me, the probably 2010 me, would have kept on going with him. I was just like, okay, because I know what I know and I'm confident in what I know. Now, if I don't know something, I don't have a problem saying I don't know. I don't have a problem asking for clarification. But coming into an environment where it was 100% culturally different and having someone try to challenge what I know I've been doing for the past, that was 5, so 9, 10 years, I was looking like, no, we're not going to do that. Um, but I think I answered your question. If I didn't, tell me.
Mm-hmm. So you just have to navigate and kind of choose your battles and
Yeah.
understanding that it's a different landscape and your perspective wasn't the only perspective, even though you knew a little bit more about the business. And yeah,
Yep.
I think, when you were explaining just like some of the intricacies of the role and some of the work, it reminded me of starting at Erie, not being a healthcare person. So we're learning all these different technical terms and all these types of things. So I know the work, but I don't know this piece. So I need to learn that piece so I can speak the language and know what you all are talking about. And so I'm sure there are some other folks that are on with us today that can, they can resonate with that. And thinking about influence without authority, which is sometimes a challenge in roles where you have to manage an output or an outcome, but you don't manage the person or the process. And so, looking at your experience and going back to Samsung, you were over the brand strategy for Xenos. I think if I'm saying right.
Exynos. Yeah, it's Exynos. Yeah, Exynos.
Exynos Auto.
Yep. It's the semiconductors that are in your cars, and if you have an Asian Samsung phone, it's in your phone.
So how did you build that creativity? I mean, excuse me, that credibility and trust in that room where you're not only a foreigner, but then now you have to learn the technical components of that. Like, what is your advice for folks that are starting from zero in a brand new environment?
Um, you have to be confident in yourself. And I will say, and I will throw this back on Kevin and a couple of our other circle of influence. It's also you and Dage, like having a friend group that's also works in your space it's very helpful because I think the very first presentation I had to give, I think I might have been texting you about it. And I had to walk through what the competitors were doing, what did it seem like our opportunity was, and especially because at that time we were pursuing business with a Chinese OEM as well as General Motors. And I had to walk in that room and I was like, I don't know I don't know if I know what I'm talking about. That was kind of like the biggest thing. And I think it was like you telling me, no, you got this. I'm not worried. You're gonna do good. And I walked in a room and I was nervous. I won't lie. Everybody knows that I listen to no hands before I go into any presentation to get
Like you,
myself
like
together.
you did today.
Yes, like I did today. Um, and I think I was petrified. But once I kind of got into the groove of, hey, you studied this information
Mhm.
and you know what you know, and you also know what you don't know. And I'm going to tell you, if you can own the things that you don't know and ask questions, be open to learning, that is what helps a lot. It helps you make that transition from being, having a little bit of that imposter syndrome because you're very confident in the fact that, hey, I know A, B, and C. I don't know D and E, and somebody needs to help me with that.
Mhm.
That is what was helpful for me. And again, it was having y'all like hype me up before I went into this meeting. And when I walked in and I gave this presentation about the landscape and how we should be pursuing our customers, especially based on our capabilities and how they were different from like a Qualcomm or NVIDIA. Those are other semiconductor designers, manufacturers, whatever you want to call it. Um, I walked out of that room and they were like, oh, I think they had two changes to my entire presentation. And then we're ready to move it forward to what they call is a part leader, which is essentially would be the equivalent of like a director of your team.
So
I
I want
walked out of there, was happy.
so I want to dig in a little bit on something you said, and you said that owning what you don't know, and I think that that's important. But I think thinking back to my own professional upbringing and just others, and if there's a lot of research out there where they talk about the double expectations of black professionals versus non-blacks, and there's an unfair or unequal expectation among us that we have to know it all, and other folks don't have that same courtesy. They cannot know things and not be held to that standard. Have you had that experience, or how do you get to that point of that shift? Is that an organizational culture thing where you're just not the right place, or is it a confidence thing? Is it a personal confidence thing?
It's a personal confidence. It's a curve. It's a mindset because I understand exactly what you're saying there. I know this is going to be put at some point, so I'm going to. I know of a person who had zero experience in a role, but because of who she knew, whatever, she got this role. And when I say zero experience, had no idea what she was
Yeah.
doing. She was, I would say she wasn't a marginalized group because she was a woman. And she walked into a room very confident and not knowing anything. Kudos to her. I think that's great. But for me, it's if you walk in a room and I feel like when you are of a marginalized group, especially if you're a black or brown, I think that a lot of times, if you pretend to know something you don't know, there's going to be that person that's in the room that's going to keep kind of poking
Mm-hmm.
until they poke a hole in what you're saying. It may not happen all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but it can and it will happen. It's always to me, you have to be comfortable in what you know. And
Yeah.
you have to be comfortable with saying, I don't know this. Now, I'm not saying, say, I don't know this, and then you're done, you wipe your hands of it. I don't know this, but I'm working on learning, finding an expert in the space
Mm-hmm.
who can help you. I can go back to starting at Harman, where, again, I'm in car audio. I always thought the more speakers you had in your vehicle, the better the sound. my who is now one of the chief engineers there, he was like, girl, no. He was like, I can tune a car with 3 speakers and it can sound better than a car with 20. Um, it's about placement, it's about the technology. And so I spent so much time with Brandon that I could do media drives or any type of media event without him because I had that knowledge. And because I sought out, okay, B, let me know. Okay, I know this car has 12 speakers, they're placed here, they're in the headliner. This is a new DSP that you're doing. How is this different from other vehicles that we've done in the past? And he would sit with me and explain everything to me and why things were placed the way they were. I will give you a perfect example. If anybody is familiar with the Lincoln Aviator, I started working on an Aviator while it was still a CAD drawing. And all my years of automotive, I don't think I had ever started on a vehicle while it was still in CAD. So I would sit on calls with Brandon and a lot of people within Lincoln. And I just remember specifically about the A-pillar speakers and where they were being placed. And he had them placed in a specific way because of the windshield. And so when
Mhm.
that sound bounces off the windshield, you get vibration, it distorts the sound, blah, blah, blah. And I remember being on this call with him, being so adamant with our partner saying, hey, no, these speakers need to go in this place. And if they're not going to be in this place, you cannot hold us responsible for any sound distortion or complaints you get about the audio system. And then he would talk to me after these calls and say, hey, this is why I did this and then this. So I say all this to say is if you don't know something, you got to learn it and you need to find somebody who is an expert and that'll help you because it'll help you when you're in those rooms and they're not in those rooms to
Mhm.
back you up and you can speak confidently about the things that you know. So if it's medical, if it's um I mean when you even look at community involvement, when you're looking at where you're placing your next clinic and why you want to put it there because of the audience that you're going to serve and you have
Mhm.
that information, you have that knowledge and you need to be confident in it. And if somebody asks you a question, it's like, hey, I'm not really sure, hey, let me get back to you
Yeah.
because I'm a research nerd. I sit up here and look some stuff up for hours on end.
Hmm. What you said, I think is super important, especially for those that are looking to kind of grow in their role. And every opportunity is an opportunity to learn. And so sometimes I get it. Sometimes we're in these meetings, we don't know why we're in these meetings, but it's good to just pay attention so you know what's going on, what's being discussed, because you never know what's going to come up. To your point, something that was discussed may come up in another meeting, or you may mention it to someone in passing. And so it's those learning opportunities where it feels like it's not my role specifically, but it kind of helps you learn to think as a global player in the sense of global in an organization. Um, but to another point, a point that you made earlier, and I think this may be a whole conversation for another day, is the example of being expected to know it all, and you see other folks not, they may barely know their role, and you're held to do two different expectations. And I think that there's a conversation to be had maybe at a later date on how do you address that at an organization where you see that the treatment isn't equal in the expectations, um, in what folks expect of others. When you see it, it's like blatant examples of I got yelled at for this, but this person doesn't know their job.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you 20 some years into a job, I don't know. I don't even know how that addresses addresses it. How you address it, how do you overcome it? To me, it's one of those things is I like to pick my battles. I'm not going to argue with somebody about, I'm going to try to help you because this is another thing. And this, I'm going to say this is work specific. It can translate over into life, but this is work specific. And I used to say this when I managed call centers 100 years ago and when I first started in marketing. Is your client or your customer does not say, Don messed up, Kevin messed up. They say, your company is who messed up.
Yeah.
So y'all all get lumped into it regardless. And while I know that there are a lot of instances and some of them are probably blocked out, where I know that people are held to a different standard and they could not do anything and probably get promoted. And I'm standing over here like, hey, girls, I left the country for 3 years on purpose.
Mhm.
um, it's just something that if I got the answer to that, I might be rich because I don't know. Because I also know that it lends itself to not only just us, it lends itself to
Yeah.
other people at times. There's some I can say that sometimes the favoritism, relationships may personal relationships fall into that I know for sure have played a role in some of these instances. But I say always kind of pick your battles and know who's your leadership.
Hmm.
I would say my leadership team, I've been fortunate that the leadership team that I had when I first started at Harman and Car Audio, I could talk to them about almost anything. Um, and I would know that I would get some good direction or guidance on how I should address things. Um, Now I will say my direct manager, she was one of those people that I can come to her with a problem, but girl, you better have 5 solutions.
Hmm.
And you tell her the ones that haven't worked, and that could be whether it was challenge I may have been having with anyone directly or indirectly reporting into me or colleagues. She would offer me some suggestions, and I kind of figure out how to weave those into what I'm doing. But if I ever can answer that question, Kevin, I make sure I put it in I text y'all and be like, look, here's what you do.
That's the answer. So things have shifted in the working world in terms of connecting culture and the bottom line. And you've worked at Ford and Campbell Ewald, these big companies, and so anyone knows that you are a champion of employee engagement. So how do you make the business case for culture and inclusion to be, to these hard nosed executives, and how do you prove that leaning into your dopeness actually drives revenue and innovation?
Um, One of the things that I've always said to my leadership is, and this, of course, this is pre-pandemic. I think a lot of the way we work has changed. People spend so much time in the office. And even now, I'm not going to say post pandemic because my brother in law literally just had COVID a couple of weeks ago. But coming out of, I would say, the height of the pandemic, people still are in a remote or hybrid space, can still find themselves spending a lot of time working, whether it's on these types of Teams calls or independent work. And while I'm not going to say the people who you work with are your family, because no, work is work, home, family is home. That there is a distinct line, and I've learned finally how to draw that line. Um, but also understanding that who feel comfortable in who they are and comfortable with their workplace tend to perform better. They stay, so you're not losing people and having to backfill jobs. That's money. No one has time to lose money. I think there's a statistic around having to retrain a replacement
Hmm.
is somewhere between like maybe $6,000 and $10,000. That's a lot of money, um, especially if you have to continually do it. And when I look at where a place where I was at, where it's a lot of specialized work, engineering, people who have to have a strong technical aptitude, you don't have time or money to try to backfill those people. Now, one thing I can say about Harman as an organization, they understand that you need to feel comfortable with who you are and where you are. And they also understand and accept that their employees are vastly different. So we've always had our ERGs. They may have not been as kind of pronounced as they are now, but I was there for 10 years and I'm pretty sure we had them all the time. And I want to say one of the times that I felt C-suite people understood what was going on was in 2020. It's height of COVID. There was George Floyd being murdered in Minnesota. And so there were a lot of things that were going on. My CMO, I want to point out that Harman is a multi-billion-dollar company. with somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 or 20,000 people that are their employees. The CMO booked a call with, it always all black people, I think. I think it might have been because he wanted to check in on us and to understand what we wanted from the company um, to help us. I've never seen that in my life. I haven't seen it since. Um, but it was a moment where I knew that I was at the right company
Mm-hmm.
because there was at least one person that lived in that C suite. I'm going to actually say it probably was all of them because they had to approve what he was doing. But there was a person in the C suite that cared enough about what was happening in the world was to literally put us on the phone and say, hey, tell me how you feeling. What do you need? What can we do as a company? How can we support you? What do you want to see out of this? That meant to me that I still remember that, and that man don't. He left Harmon, I think in 2022, maybe 22, 23. But you don't see that in a lot of organizations. And
Mm-hmm.
so for him to take that time to do that, I was like, okay. So that means that the company places value on these organizations and I mean on these groups. And I will say that Harmon actually there is a C-suite sponsor of every ERG within Harmon. So there is Harmon Black Professionals, there's LGBTQ, I was gonna say LGBTQ. I don't want to offend nobody, but that's what I say to my friends because that's what they taught me. But um, there's LGBTQIA group. There's a women's group. There's neurodivergent. Um, there is I'm missing one. I'm 100% surely missing one. But you have all these ERGs that all have an executive sponsor that supports us in everything that we do. We all have budget to be able to not only host internal programs, but also, so like I think the last thing I did as site leader for our office is we all went out to lunch with one of our executive sponsors. The executive sponsors are open to discussions with us. Um, I will say we were pretty fortunate because both of our executive sponsors is the chief legal officer and the person that works right below her. So they also make sure we're legally aware of things we can do and say.
Mm-hmm.
So that also helps a lot. But they don't have a problem getting on the phone with us to discuss any concerns that we may have.
Yeah.
So I think that one, Harmon understands that very well, but also as a leader, especially as a people leader, is making sure that you embody some of those things that you want the company to embody. Because I don't like for people to quit because that gives me more work.
Yeah. I would say, echo your your thoughts on the executive support. So Kelly, who was the person that was on when we jumped on before the meeting, she's our sponsor, our executive sponsor. My boss, Nicole, who had to drop off, she's the executive sponsor for what we call Query, our LGBTQIA plus. So we have the same thing. So it's good to see them come out and support because it matters when you see the executive leadership show up in these spaces where we're talking about the things that matter to us, and sometimes those things they change the way we do business,
Yep.
and that's kind of that's what you want. You want to be able to find folks with shared thoughts, experiences that can lead into opportunities to improve the business.
And kind of a cool thing, you mentioned that. So during, I think last year, where there was a lot of shift from companies changing what was publicly known as diversity, equity, inclusion groups. Um, Luckily, like I said, our chief legal officer and Fred, who works directly under her, are our executive sponsors. But what was really good is they were able to explain to us the legal reason behind some of these shifts. And that made it a lot easier because not feel like I know because I know a lot of people who operate throughout these large corporations and small ones who were making adjustments, and they felt like they were kind of leaving their diverse group of people in the dust.
Mm.
But I think what was great for us that helped me understand, and it helped me lend it to some other into other spaces, not one in particular, and you know that one, but it's other spaces. It helped me understand what companies were doing and why they were doing it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate them being able to speak candidly with us to help us understand and lean and work with us to see what those adjustments needed to be, and how we show up in different spaces.
So I have one question for you
Mhm.
um, before we jump off. And so this is about advice. So imposter
Don't do
syndrome,
it. Don't do it. I'm just kidding.
imposter syndrome often leads to over preparation as a safety net. And when I think about our friend group, we are all well prepared because of trauma, professional trauma.
Professional
Looking back
trauma,
at your
we
20-year
trauma.
journey, is there anything you wish you had done less of or worried less about so you could have moved faster or taken more risk?
Um, that's a good question. I don't know. My honest answer is I don't know. I do tend to over prepare because it is that work trauma. It is that trauma. It's also that trauma of, being the only one in the room and you don't want to
Absolutely.
say something that's stupid.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you are not afforded the grace of people who say stuff that's stupid. So you tend to over prepare. Case in point, I got an interview at 4 p.m. And if you saw these notes I had going on, at one point I literally had to stop and say, "Girl, you weighing too many notes." And you know what your job is.
Yeah.
You know what you bring to the space, and as long as you are confident in that, you can keep on going. I told Kevin earlier I was preparing for this interview, and I literally had some weird anxiety panic attack. And then I sat and I was like, "No, you know this, and here's how this equates to this in this particular role." And I said, "Oh, I see. I'm overdoing it." So I closed my notebook and I went to bed.
Yeah.
Um, so I think once you understand who you are, what you know, what you want to do, and you understand the space that you're showing up in, it will help. Um, I, I I know what works for me, and it might have been funny what I say. I listen to no hands, but I am not lying. Before I have to present in front of any large group, for some reason, I don't know why it is that song, but it helps bring me down, but also gives me hype at the
Mhm.
same time. So I would just
That's luck
say,
if you buck for me. That's my
yes, I know that's for you.
that's my chosen song.
uh, I I would say is you can build your credibility starting out small. Those small wins, those small conversations, those small tidbits that you bring into the room. And I'm gonna tell you, as you continue to progress and those small tidbits become larger conversations and you learn more, it'll help with your confidence. It'll help you feel as though you belong in the room because, quite frankly, you do belong in the room. No matter the
Mhm.
reason why you were put there, you belong in that room because you're in that room and you know what you know and you know what you don't know. And if you don't know, you got our good friend Google's. You can look it up real quick.
Here we go. We are we have about just a minute left. I do want to give at least one person an opportunity. If they have any reflections, we don't have time for a question. But if anyone on the line has a reflection or a thought they would like to share before we jump off, please unmute and go ahead. I do want to make an opportunity for that to happen if anyone feels so inclined.
I just have three things to say, maybe four. I didn't count the words. I love your confidence. That's it.
Thank you. It took me a minute to get here. I'm not gonna lie to you. It took me a minute to get here.
Mhm. I'll speak on behalf, and Dawn can she can agree or not. But what I think what I think that helps your confidence is you got to have the right friend circle. When you're
That's true.
around dope folks, you realize water always finds its level. And when you're in spaces where you're not equally yoked, so to speak, it causes doubt. But when you're around winners, your relative level of winners, and you see that they excel and you are on par, you're around winners. And I think that that's important to examine your circles and your friend groups and where you spend time with folks. Not saying you got to let people go, but you may need to adjust where you spend your time and who you talk to about your journey and your fears and your challenges, because not everybody's qualified at your level to speak.
And I will say sometimes things come with age, as much as I hate to
Yes.
throw that in there. But a lot of times things come with age and they also come with experience. So again, it's one of those things where you spend a good portion of your time at work. Do you want to be there miserable? So once you kind of get that together, you say, hey, this is who I am. This is how I'm going to present myself. Uh, Sometimes they can take it, or at some points in life, they can take it or leave it. Now, do I put on that face sometimes? Yes. When I was sitting in the room with this important man at Samsung telling him, why are y'all not telling people that y'all actually manufacture semiconductors as well as test them? They do the entire gamut where generally it's broken up into different companies. Why are you not selling that to people at a time when everything on this earth that requires semiconductors is now on back order?
Right.
And he looked at me and I'm like, this is somebody who has been at Samsung. I'm just the girl who was like, hey, can I apply for this? And the fact that they didn't think of that, and he said, oh, but did you tell that to your part leader? I said, yes, it's in my presentation. He said, that's a good idea because I never thought of that. So it's also being confident in what you know. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, because guess what? This is what
Everybody.
my mother tells me, nothing beats a failure but a try. And when I was a kid, I used to be like, that is the most ridiculous thing you are saying to me. But now as an adult, hey, if I fail, that means I actually tried. And that means I learned something.
All right. Y'all heard it. I'm going to let you all go. 'Cause I know we're right into our buffer time, but I definitely appreciate Dawn for joining us today. Is in the middle of prepping for an interview later on today. Thank you all for making a busy time during our great network disruption. I appreciate you all, and maybe on hotspots, all of that good stuff. I appreciate the effort that you all spent. Please connect with Dawn on LinkedIn. She's pretty easy to find, pretty active on there. So with that, I would let you all go and enjoy the rest of your Friday. Again, thank you, Dawn.
Thank you guys for having me. Enjoy your weekend. And as KG said, you can find me on the LinkedIn's trying to navigate this new world of job searching.
All right,
Have a great
everybody.
weekend. Bye, guys.
Bye.